Welcome back to the IDP Plus podcast. I'm your host, Johnny, and on this episode, we will be talking defensive back IDP rankings from a dynasty perspective, part two. That's right, if you missed part one, I dropped the first 18 names in a video. Go check what you've missed for the top half of my rankings. That means this will be 19 through 36, part two of my rankings. Just before I show you my screen and show you my rankings, I do want to reiterate that my stats, my opinions, my fantasy, advice comes from a tackle-heavy perspective. We're going to weigh tackles more than looking at sacks, pass defense, things like that. And I understand those are important for defensive backs, but time and time will tell you that I'm sure if you play IDP, that tackles are the most bankable stat. Don't focus on something that's happening 3 or 4 times a year. Focus on the other that's happening 100 or more times a year. For two examples of this, Deron Bland, if you drafted him this past year, 2024, I'm sorry to hear that. Deron Bland, you were chasing the interceptions. He had 9 in 2023, led the league, was all groovy. But last year, albeit in a shortened season, 7 games, did not record an interception. That's why we don't chase it. Next guy, Justin Reed, had a fine season in 2023 with close to 100 tackles, 3 sacks. You're probably looking at that like, oh, I'll get that again. The tackles were down, but also the sacks went from 3 to 0 last year. So again, happening 3 or 4 times, why chase it? Why? I don't even look at the sacks when it comes to defensive backs. I'm here for the tackles. And without further ado, I'm going to start sharing my screen so you can get a look at where my mind's at. So even though it says 20, keep in mind the first row I lost for my columns. I'm sorry, for my headliners there, my stats. As you can see, I have age, contract, how many years are left, how many games they played last year, their tackles, their double-digit tackle performances, which is a very important stat when looking at defensive backs if you're talking to me. Of course, sacks, interceptions, tackles for loss, and forced fumbles are all groovy too. But we're here mostly to talk about the tackles. So going into this list, my number 19 guy, starting off the second tier here, is Keisean Nixon from Green Bay. At number 20 is Jordan Battle. 21, Jalen Pitre. 22, Reed Blankenship. 23, Quentin Lake. 24, Minkah Fitzpatrick. 25, Kam Bynum. 26, Devon Witherspoon. 27, Cooper Dejean. 28, Jeremy Chinn. 29, Talanoa Hufanga. 30, Kam Curl. 31, Alontae Taylor. 32, Mike Sainristil. 33, Taylor Rapp. 34, Jevon Holland. 35, Paulson Adebo. And 36, Cole Bishop. So just going before I go and dive into these rankings, if you already saw my 1 through 18, you know that it was very safety, flooded. And here we get about 7 cornerbacks. So you do start to see the cornerbacks. I rank them lower just because simply, I'm sure if you play IDP, you know this. If you have a choice, if you're just starting defensive backs, probably 2 of them, you're probably not starting cornerbacks, maybe a Jalen Jones, maybe a Riley Moss in there. But that's kind of year to year. We're not really ranking those guys high. Cornerbacks are very, very volatile. Defensive backs are volatile. Safeties are volatile. Cornerbacks are even more volatile. But we do show some respect. And I understand not everyone plays, high tackle scoring. So I tried to throw some cornerbacks in there that are more consensus picks. I'm certainly not a huge proponent of them if they're not getting tackles, but that's just me and my scoring. So we'll start it off with Keisean Nixon. What I want to say about Keisean Nixon is if you are playing in big tackle heavy scoring, you already know this. But Keisean Nixon, in one of my leagues, one of my Yahoo leagues last year, he was actually the 3rd defensive back. That's right, safeties and cornerbacks, only behind Budda Baker. Budda Baker scored 282 points. You're getting 2 points for a solo tackle in this league. Nick Cross was 20 points behind him with 260. Keisean Nixon was 3rd. Nobody between him and the top 2 guys there. He had 241 points. Well, you ask me, how can he have 241 points? He didn't have over 100 tackles. He had 88 here, as we can see. Tackles, 61 were solo, 27 were assisted. But the thing is, for Keisean Nixon, if you play in leagues where defensive players can get return yards, then a couple guys on this list, we'll start with Nixon, but there's other guys on this list that you're going to have to bump up for sure and cater to your scoring. and Keisean Nixon is the number one guy. There's nobody on this list who had more return yards than him. Last year, he had in 2024 576 return yards. 2023, the year before, if you want to say, was this a fluke? He had 239 that year too. Now they do bring in Mecole Hardman. I'm not sure if the return yard, prowess is going to be there again, but still, if you saw my last episode, you heard me kind of bash Xavier Nixon and say, when your cornerback is getting the more, or in this case, the exact same 88 tackles as your strong safety, and looking at Keisean Nixon and Xavier McKinney, that doesn't look good for Xavier McKinney, but it looks great for Nixon. Furthermore, 2023, 2 years ago, yes, his numbers keep ascending. In 2023, he had 80 tackles, those return yards I had mentioned, half a sack, interception too. So Keisean Nixon is not somebody who's going to lead the league in tackles. And, I'm a big tackle guy, but this guy does a perfect blend of everything. You can see this past year, I highlighted in green, great things he did. He had 3 sacks as a cornerback. I don't know that off the top of my head, but I don't believe there was another cornerback to have 3 or more sacks, which means I believe he led the league. He had 8 tackles for loss and 3 forced fumbles too. So Keisean Nixon, only 27 years old. He's got 2 years left on the contract. This is really the cornerback. We're not counting Brian Branch as a cornerback anymore. This is the cornerback that if I have to draft a cornerback, and especially if it's in return yard leagues, Keisean Nixon is the guy. Moving on, Jordan Battle, 24 years old. Haven't got a huge, sip of coffee with him. He's only, started 6 games this year. Didn't start all the games in his rookie year in 2023. But in those 6 games started, he did have 1 double-digit tackle game, which 1 out of 6 is pretty acceptable. In those 6 games started, let's see, Jordan Battle. Actually, I'll give it to you this way: 14 starts in the last 2 years. In those starts, he's had 92 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, and an interception. So basically what I'm saying is 14 starts is 14 games, and he's had 92 tackles. If you can get a defensive back to give you over 100 tackles, then they're definitely worth rostering, and he would have smashed that. At 3 more games, let's say he would have had, we'll give him generously, 5 tackles a game. Jordan Battle would have had 107 tackles in his start so far in his career. So that's basically 1 year, 1 complete year for Jordan Battle. Look, I know that, he hasn't really showed up consistently so far, but he's only 24 years old. He's got 2 years left on the contract. Health is not a concern. And, when he's showed up and played 100% of snaps, he's getting 6, 7, 8 tackles a game. So Jordan Battle, and this is a great pick because I don't think he's really high. Maybe other people see the potential, but probably when it comes draft time, they're going to say, what have you done for me lately? And Jordan Battle's not going to look good to them. So this is somebody you want to take advantage of if you're in startups out there, or maybe send a trade out for. Jalen Pitre, another young guy here at 21. Jalen Pitre is only 25 years old, does have 4 years left. I believe signed an extension, so he has 4 years left on that contract. Very young guy. He's left a bad taste in our mouth. Had a down year last year in 2023. Then this year, 2024, missed 5 games, only played 12 games, only had 65 tackles. That's not even an average of 6 tackles a game. A little bit over 5 tackles a game to be square with you. But 2 out of those 12 games were double-digit tackle games. And Jalen Pitre, don't forget, I know he had a bad year in 24, bad year in 23. Because we have such high standards for him, in 2022, he had 147 tackles with 5 tackles for loss and 5 interceptions in a full season. But that's great, food for thought there. Jalen Pitre, 147 tackles. If you missed part 1, Budda Baker in 2019 had 147 tackles. Well, guess what? He went up the ante this year and beat that. So Jalen Pitre, I don't think that he's going to come out and have 160 tackles this year. The proof is going to have to be in the pudding for him. But don't forget about him. Looking back and to make the comparison, Budda Baker, I believe he's 29 years old. He did this. He had 147 tackles in 2019, which was 5 or 6 years ago at this point. So Jalen Pitre, he's still young. He can still do it. He might be moving up in the ranks, by the way this season goes. So little bit more consistency needed by Jalen Pitre. But again, going back to that 2022 season, 147 tackles, 5 out of 17 games were double-digit tackles. That I think there might be 2 or 3 players that were in the top 18 that had 5 or more double-digit tackle games. So very valuable here. This is especially if I'm in a dynasty and redraft, I'm not really, pushing for him as much. But dynasty, I kind of pushed him up these rankings just because the potential that he can have for another 5, 6 years. That is. Moving on, Reed Blankenship is 26 years old. He is in the last year of his contract, which right now drops him in the rankings. But I do believe he's going to get re-signed. I think this is a good player with Philadelphia. They've always obviously got a good thing going there. They're going to try to retain what they can. And Reed Blankenship, if they can pay him for top 10, top 5 safety, I think they go and get a deal. I don't think he's going to get the top safety money by any means, but still a productive player. Doesn't really do much as far as else than tackles, but that's okay. That's what we're here for, is the tackles. The only problem is he had a down year last year, a big down year. Only 78 total tackles. I mean, this is a guy who had 113 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and 3 picks in 2023. So the tackles way down there, over 30 tackles lost. I'm not really sure, to give you an answer on what happened. But Reed Blankenship, the fact that he's out there with Sydney, I believe it's Sydney Brown this year, I do think that he's going to, take ownership of that, that defensive backfield. And I think Reed Blankenship, just the kind of banger he is, I'm not expecting him to have 120 tackles. That's not realistic expectations, but definitely higher than 78. I'm sure if you're playing IDP right now, he was owned the whole year. So I think don't go get cold feet on me and drop him. I think he's coming back. But I understand if you're in a real shallow league and you can't hold bait. And this is also a position, just a word of advice, defensive backs, they grow on trees, man. You might have somebody have a late push in their career, Kevin Byard. Think back to the Antoine Bethea days. I know I'm dating myself there. But yeah, those guys can kind of get it done later in their careers. We look at Xavier Woods, who's going to make an appearance later on this list. He had his best year at 29 years old. So don't forget about these guys, but you can also replace them too if need be. But Reed Blankenship, I still think there's a lot of meat on the bone here at 26 years old, even though with 1-year contract. I do think he gets re-signed and the trajectory comes back a little bit. So 2022 might be a little low here. But we're right here right now. So I got to work with what I got. Moving on to number 23, another 26-year-old, and that is Quentin Lake. Quentin Lake had a tremendous year. He had 4 double-digit tackle games, 3 of those being the first 3 games of the season, 1 towards the end. So he finished strong and ended strong. I was not really surprised to see Quentin Lake, be fantasy relevant. I was kind of in on him in the preseason, but to say 4 double-digit tackle appearances, I did not see that coming. I don't think anybody did. Also had 2 sacks, which was nice. We're not going to go and chase it. We're not going to say he's going to have 4 next year. We'll be lucky if he gets 2. But that's just, sugar on top at this point. Not much else. Didn't have a pick. Didn't have any forced fumbles. 1 tackle for loss. So not somebody who's getting in the backfield much. Like you see Jalen Pitre, like you see Jeremy Chinn lower on the list. But that's okay. If you can still go get over 100 tackles, there's plenty of room for you on my team. So Quentin Lake, you'll see I didn't touch Kam Curl yet. Things pretty much stay the same here for the Rams. Quentin Lake, Kam Curl, and Cam Kitchens pretty much run it back. And Quentin Lake, I think he could actually. I'm not saying that he's going to have more tackles, but I do think the flashy stats there, interceptions, tackles for loss. These things can come up actually for Quentin Lake. So the best might be yet ahead for Quentin Lake. He's a very volatile person here. He's somebody who could be ranked 14 next year, or he can be ranked off this list next year. So we'll see how it goes for Quentin Lake. But I do bet on the guy, and I think that if you're in a startup right now, this is a more than fine defensive back 2 for you to roster. At number 24, we have Minkah Fitzpatrick. Minkah Fitzpatrick coming off a full season, which is kind of rare for him. He played all 17 games, had 96 tackles, had just missed that 100 a 100 tackle marker. But don't forget, this is a guy, a really good safety, even though he's playing the free safety position. I know a lot of times in fantasy we try to roster favor the strong safeties, but hey, Budda Baker, after all, is a free safety, and he just led the league in tackles. But Minkah Fitzpatrick, I think you're going to look at a good season out of him, a nice rebound. I think he gets over 100 tackles. Deshaun Elliott, I believe, is there for only one more year. So this is going to be a good year for Minkah Fitzpatrick to return to form, get over 100 tackles, maybe get some more splash plays. He only had one interception last year. But overall, I think that Minkah is a strong find, and he's kind of buried here in the rankings because he's been injury concerned. He's I think the year before last, 2023, he might have played 10 or 11 games, but had 58 tackles in that shortened season. So, he would have been on pace for his 100 tackle mark again in that 2023 year. He only missed it by 4 tackles last year. I think Minkah is a very bankable guy here. This is somebody you can really gauge. If they stay healthy, they're going to hit over 100 tackles, just over, but not do much else. But that's fine, at the position. I'll just stop it right here and say defensive back is not where you're going to win your league. It's offense. It's, defensive linemen that you pick up throughout the season. Those are going to make bigger splashes than your defensive backs, ranked 25. Okay. Before I move on with number 25, I just wanted to mention we're doing a promo right here at IDP Plus. We are partnering with Fast Draft. It's literally, like the name says, Fast Draft, draft fast. It's a new app that's it's actually been around a while, but I'm new to it, learning about Fast Draft. Check out on the App Store. Type in Fast Draft app. If you like doing best balls, if you like doing DFS, this is an app for you. Right now, I am actually going to do a startup, and it's called D Up. I'll actually be in this league, so you can play me if you'd like. You can play against me and see how your IDP team does. Once again, that's going to be called D Up. Once you log into Fast Draft, you'll be able to see that. And the promo we're running right now is Fast Draft is going to match your deposit up to $50 for first-time users. So if you want to throw $10, they'll throw you $10 back. If you want to throw $50 and do the whole kit and caboodle, they're going to match you $50. But you need to use the promo code +Johnny to get that match. So once again, $50, you get a free $50. Your bank account, your bankroll will already be at 100. So, +Johnny is the promo code. Come play me. Come stack up with the big dogs here at IDP Plus, man. So moving on, we're going to get into our next guy, Kam Bynum. Kam Bynum had a down year by our standards last year, did not eclipse 100 tackles, had the same amount as Minkah Fitzpatrick. That's nice that they're ranked right next to each other, but not the sole reason. Kam Bynum, he's on a new team now. He is no longer a Minnesota Viking. He is an Indianapolis Colt, but I'll get back to that in a minute. Let's look at last year. Last year, the production was down. He's played all 17 games, but he did not have the, what was it? Let's see. In 2023, he had 137 tackles. So he missed out by 41 tackles. And not only did he have 137 tackles, he had 2 tackles for loss that season, 3 picks, 4 double-digit tackle games. You see over here, Kam Bynum only had 1 double-digit tackle game last season. Not really impressive. And I'm kind of torn on Bynum because that was 2023 was like his big coming out party. And, before that, he was just kind of a role player, got kind of spot starts here and there, was never really fantasy relevant. Then he had that huge year, 2023, put himself on the map and then regressed last year. And it was kind of a shame to see. Harrison Smith was only getting older. Metellus was switching his role. They were kind of keeping Kam Bynum in his free safety role. And ultimately, Kam Bynum kind of, the production fizzled, unfortunately. So we don't really know who he is at this point. An important piece of information, 2 important pieces, is Indianapolis signed a 26-year-old guy for 4 years. So this is a pretty strong signing. They're going to think that he's there for the long haul. This is a major piece they signed him for. Keep in mind, Julian Blackmon, who was the number 2 safety to Nick Cross. Well, actually, he was a number 2 safety. I forget to who it was at that point. But, for a couple years, Julian Blackmon is a second defensive back, made some splashes there. in fantasy and IDP. So I know that Cam Bynum's going to be next to Nick Cross, which actually kind of hurts his value, to be honest with you. I still think Nick Cross is a dog. He's going to be out getting his tackles, and that is going to hurt Cam Bynum. But 96 tackles. I mean, I think Cam Bynum can hit 100 or a little bit over right here and add some splash plays. So, he's on the cusp right now. Is he sinking? Is he swimming? I'm not sure. We can see Cam Bynum. I'm sure he was in my top 10 last year, so he can come back, but he's going to have to earn it. So Cam Bynum, we're a little down on him in Indianapolis. Moving on, probably a hot take for a lot of people right now, but that's what I do in here. I take some hot takes. Devon Witherspoon has been a stalwart, especially if you're drafting cornerbacks. He's probably in your top 5, top 10 dynasty rankings. But this is just a hunch going on. I can't look at stats. Stats actually back the dude up. Last year, 98 tackles, had a phenomenal rookie season, and then the second season actually did better. The rookie season, he only had 79 tackles. Well, last year, his second season, he moves up to 98. He had 6 tackles for loss last year. His rookie year, he had 8 tackles for loss with 3 sacks and a fumble forced. It wasn't so splashy this year, but the tackles did come up. So you asked me, Johnny, why are you low on him? Why is he all the way down under some questionable names, as you call it? Cam Bynum, Quentin Lake. I have Witherspoon even lower because I have a hunch that they drafted a rookie, a safety who I don't watch college ball, I don't know much about, but his name is Nick Amonwari from South Carolina. And I've been reading a little bit about this situation and what it may seem as this rookie is very versatile. Now, this could be all smoke. We won't know till the preseason comes. But if they do move Amonwari kind of into that nickel slot role, does that kick Devon Witherspoon on the outside with who's the other guy they got there? I forget, Tariq Woolen. Maybe they play the outside. Josh Jobe is kicked from the lineup, and that kind of takes away a lot of value for Devon Witherspoon. Not too many outside cornerbacks get close to sniffing 100 tackles. So, this is a hunch right now. Why I'm dropping him so low is just to kind of warn you, if you're in a startup right now, don't think of Devon Witherspoon like you thought of him last year. That's all I'm saying. He's still 24, still got 3 years on the contract, but there is a new toy in town, and it depends on how they use him. But Devon Witherspoon, the splash plays might take a hurting here, and the tackles most definitely will if he moves to the outside. This is not somebody who's putting up double-digit tackles as it is right now. 0 double-digit tackle games. That's fine and dandy. He's a fine player with all the splash plays he does. He's all over the ball, but I'm just a little bit scared of him with moving his alignment. Sometimes when you start moving a player's mojo, I think of Josh Metellus from Minnesota. You play with the guy so much that, fantasy, it kind of hurts us. So that might be the case with Witherspoon. It might be not. More to come on that once we see training camp preseason. These rankings will be updated again. This is just a flash of right now. Moving on to 27, I have Cooper Dejean. Cooper Dejean had a decent year, did not play a snap until week 5. So we're looking at basically 12 games started, 12 games played. Cooper Dejean only had 51 tackles, which in 12 games, that's not going to pay the rent. That's only a little bit over 4 tackles a game. Not much really else to say in the splash plays. Half a sack, 3 tackles for loss, a fumble forced. But keep in mind, again, going back to the return yards, Cooper Dejean is one of those guys who did that. He had 211 return yards this past season. Maybe he gets more next year. Maybe that helps his IDP prowess if your league enables that scoring. But bottom line, Cooper Dejean, and I'm ranking him high kind of here because he is 22. He has a lot of potential. He showed out in the playoffs, big games. I expect that to be the Cooper Dejean we see. But the stats will tell you only 5 out of 13 games did Cooper Dejean play 90 or more snaps. And I get it, 90 might be a little high for the slot corner, but even only in 8 out of 13 games did he play 80% or more. So I think, to be honest with you, Cooper, the snap count's going to have to come up a little bit. I do think it will, but we just have to verify that first. So I'm not saying don't draft Cooper Dejean. I'm just saying draft him with caution and don't look at all the potential. Don't get caught up in that. Get caught up in the situation, the team, training camp blurbs, and really protect Cooper Dejean and make sure when you throw him out on week one that he's going to be in that starting role and have assume more responsibility. To be honest with you, but great guy for the long haul for the next 6 or 10 years even. Moving on to number 28, I have Jeremy Chinn. Jeremy Chinn, you see a lot of green next to him here. 5 out of 17 games with double-digit tackle games, which is an excellent stat. That's probably, if I had to guess, maybe top 10, top 12 in the league. Tackles for loss last year in 2024, he had 7, which is tremendous. 2 sacks, a forced fumble. Of course, if you remember him last year, I think one game versus Philly, he had like 18 tackles. So, if you had 18 tackles in a game, then that only leaves you with 100 for the other 16. And I know he did have, obviously 5 double-digit tackle games, and it could work 2 ways. You could say, oh, he's a great player. That's the way I see it. Or he has a high potential any given week. Or you can say, well, he had 50 or more tackles right there, and he only had 50 the other 12 games. So definitely inconsistent a little bit. Jeremy Chinn. Hey, to be honest with you, most defensive backs this low are going to be inconsistent. But my biggest worry, Jeremy Chinn, looking at the production, you can make a case for him to be a top 15, top 20 defensive back. But for me, what I'm worrying about is when he's leaving Washington, he's leaving Dan Quinn, the defensive, guru, and he's going to the Raiders. Is he really going to be the Jeremy Chinn he was last year? I mean, the Raiders scare me, man. I don't know the last time they had a good fantasy relevant safety there. So I know Trayvon Moehrig was there last year. He did good for half a season. Don't tell me Charles Woodson. That was so many years ago. So for real, sit back and think about that one. It's a little bit risky here with Chinn, but still huge dividends. Only 27 years old. Got a 2-year deal. Wouldn't be surprised if he was productive. Something similar to Moehrig last year. But I don't expect the same tackle numbers at all. Moving on to number 29, we have Talanoa Hufanga coming back, resurrecting himself, still only 26 years old, was an electric safety not too long ago with the 49ers. He's getting a change of scenery. He's going to Denver, still only 26 years old, 3 years on a new contract, so new fresh perspectives there, new fresh greens for Hufanga. Played 7 games last season, was actually pretty productive in those 7 games. This is a big splash player. If you're talking tackle heavy, he's not a household name, not the first guy who comes to mind. But when we're talking interceptions, splash plays, I believe he had 2 sacks 2 years ago. Talanoa Hufanga is pretty, all over the place. Can do multiple facet production, I should say. And Hufanga in 23 and 24, if we just combine those numbers, I get it. It's not great. He wasn't completely healthy, but he did play 18 games played in the last 2 seasons. So we can basically call that a full year. So in 2023 and 2024 combined, 18 games played, he had 90 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and 3 interceptions. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think that Talanoa Hufanga is going to be, a DB1 by any means, not even in Denver. But I will say this comparison. So, PJ Locke was there, I believe, free safety last season. He is gone. They're bringing in Talanoa Hufanga. I don't think Hufanga is going to have the level of production that Brandon Jones did. But let's say Brandon Jones is up here and PJ Locke's down here. I think Hufanga ranks somewhere in between. And if you're in a deep defensive back, maybe you start 3 or 4 defensive backs, maybe you're in a 16, 18-man league, then Hufanga is somebody who's a DB2 in that kind of scoring. But to me, not somebody who you want to have as your first defensive back, but certainly a serviceable second defensive back. And I do think that, he gets back to the tackle ways. Hopefully he gets those interceptions, a couple splash plays back. Talanoa Hufanga is a fine defensive back too, and somebody who can really jump up the rankings or fall down. Is kind of a wild card at this point. We'll see how it goes. And, as far as him and Brandon Jones, I think we'll both have a chance for success in fantasy. I think they're very similar players, but I do think unanimously an upgrade over PJ Locke. And they get to retain him. I believe he's goes back to special teams role. So this is a good situation for an ascending Denver team. I'm excited to see how it goes. At 30, we got Kam Curl. Kam Curl, man, he was definitely in my top 10 last year, especially when he was coming off 115 tackle season with the sack, 3 tackles for loss, and a forced fumble. And that was for Washington. Well, guess what? He's wearing a new cape now. This will be his second year with the Rams. And you can see red here. Yeah, 79 tackles in 16 games. Not even rosterable straight up at that point. He shouldn't be rostered really right now. This is somebody who should just be creeping in the weeds. And week 1, if he comes out and gets 7-8 tackles, yeah, you're definitely back on the train. And I think that's the way I'm going to play Kam Curl. He's in a make or break year. He's in his last year of his contract. Only 26 years old. The ability, the potential is there for Kam Curl to make this resurrection. Was not pretty by any means last year. Only 1 game with double-digit tackles, which I'm surprised he even had that. 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss, 2 forced fumbles. And you know what? Kam Curl, I'm cool with that because he's not somebody who's come out and lit the world up as far as interceptions or sacks, things like that. He's a well-rounded player, but you're here for the tackles. So hopefully in the second year of his contract, in the final year of his contract, he can make it click. And I think that's what's going to happen. I'm not exactly saying that all 3 of these guys or even 2 of them will be fantasy superstars, but I do like Kam Curl, and I still like Quentin Lake too. So fine defensive backs. It's kind of good for our sake that they had down years because they're hidden in the weeds now. We can kind of pick these guys up with our last pick. Maybe don't even draft defensive backs, and when it comes time for cuts, you come back here and snake a guy like Kam Curl. Next is a cornerback at 31, Alontae Taylor. Alontae Taylor was very, very productive last season. If you had him in week 1, big kudos to you. He had 3 sacks in week 1, finished the season with 4 sacks. So don't, that's a perfect example. Don't sit there and say, oh, this is a guy who's going to get me 4 or 5 sacks this year. I do not think it's the case. I'd be surprised if he hit 4 sacks, but that's not what we're here for. We're here for a cornerback who, not only does he get tackles, we're also looking at somebody when we look at pass defense. He had 16 last year. You may get a point or 2 for that in your leagues. He had 30 pass defense over the last 2 seasons combined. Very impressive there. He did have 3 sacks in week 1. He did have 2 other games with a half a sack. So this is a guy who, maybe can get 3 or 4 games with a half a sack and get his 2 sacks. That's all fine and dandy. But when you look at the pass defense, you look at the tackle rate. I mean, for a cornerback, this is pretty good here. 89 tackles for a cornerback, pretty darn good. All 17 games played. He's in a contract year. He's their guy there at cornerback. They lost Paulson Adebo. We'll talk about him later. Alontae Taylor. If I'm in a 12-man and I got to start 2 defensive backs, I'm not even really thinking about Alontae Taylor. But if I'm in a league where I got to start a cornerback, I'm absolutely salivating over him. This guy is kind of a hidden gem. I think that the fact that he kind of, if he would have had 3 sacks at the end of the year, then people were salivating to draft him. But the fact that he started strong and kind of faded, and I won't even say faded, he had some games late in the season, 8, 9 tackles. He had 11 out of 17 games were 5 or more tackles from a cornerback. Those are games where I can't say he had any double-digit games. He didn't. But he had 2 games with 9 tackles, a game with 8 tackles, a game with 7 tackles. This is an upper echelon tackler for a cornerback. So bottom line is if you're rostering cornerbacks, very fantasy relevant, very fruitful for IDP. Moving on, another cornerback at 24, and you see I have 24 and 3/4 of a year. We're making every year count here in Dynasty. That is Mike Sainristil. Had a tremendous end of the season. A guy who definitely left a good taste in our mouths. Played all 17 games. Had 93 tackles. And as you see this, the stats might tell you he had a better year than Cooper Dejean. I still have Cooper Dejean ranked a little higher. That's just kind of hunch and gut feeling over the long haul of their career. But, if you want to sit here and nitpick and say he should be ahead of Cooper Dejean, I'm fine with that. Again, top 10, top 12 defensive backs really are pretty chalk. But once you get down here in the 20s through 40s, it's rough. Just the fact that they made it is a credit in itself. So Mike Sainristil, going back to that that good taste he left in our mouths. The last 8 games specifically, not including playoffs, of the regular season, Mike Sainristil ended with those 8 games with 49 tackles. So that's over 5 tackles a game. He had an interception, 9 passes defense, and a forced fumble. So really a second half player of last year. Not surprising. He's a rookie. He was a rookie. It took him, a couple games to hit his stride. He was a starter off the bat, which is very impressive. And you know what? Thinking of Mike Sainristil, I can't get that game versus Detroit. I was rooting for Detroit, but man, I don't think that the Commanders would have won, or at least won by that much, we could say, without Mike Sanders still in that game. So arrows pointing up for him. Not somebody who's going to be returning like Cooper Dejean, but if you do value him higher than Cooper Dejean, that's not a problem. I'm not going to argue on that. I understand where you're coming from. So very short tackler. That's going to get my vote. And somebody who you're probably thinking for the next 6 to 8 years is going to do this. So definitely deserves to be on this list. 33 is going to be Taylor Rapp. Taylor Rapp, man, this is not a sexy pick. This is just nitty gritty. Get it done. We know what he's done. It feels like he's been in the league for 6-7 years now. Still only 27 years old. And you know what? I think that the Buffalo Bills kind of value this guy more than we do, even in fantasy football. I mean, he's a fine defensive back. A lot of my leagues, I don't even draft defensive backs. When it comes time for cuts, I'm going to stash a running back, see if he's the starter. And if not, okay, then right before week 1, I'll come get a guy like Taylor Rapp. I know what he's going to do. 82 tackles in 14 games. So he got snubbed 3 games. Let's just say he played 3 more games, right, to get to 17. Let's give him 15 more tackles, 5 tackles a game. He would have ended right at 97. That's the perfect amount. Taylor Rapp's going to get me 100 tackles. I'm not really worried about, Damar Hamlin, Cole Bishop. Taylor Rapp's the guy there for at least this year. And the Bills are, again, a team that, has great success. Why mess with what's going well? This is a guy who's been in the system for multiple years, a veteran at this point. So Taylor Rapp, as you can see here, short tackler, 82 tackles. 2 of those games were double-digit tackles. Not really going to do much else, but I'm not really looking for much else. If you can give me 100 tackles in 17 games, I'm going to put you on my team. So Taylor Rapp, not the sexiest pick, but don't forget about him. Certainly deserves respect. Number 34, Jevon Holland, a guy who slid down the rankings. I believe I had him at 14 last year. Here he is at 34. He slid down 20 spots. Honestly, I can only say a putrid year for him in 2024. Only had 62 tackles in 15 games. That's just barely over 4 tackles a game. Not going to cut it. 2023, I believe his first 2 or 3 games were double-digit tackles. He didn't have one last season out of 15 games. Maybe health was not there. I'm not sure what it was, but it kind of has me with a bad taste in my mouth about Jevon Holland. This is a guy who, we saw had double-digit tackles. He had 3 forced fumbles the year before in 2023, and then just laid an egg completely last year. So maybe a change of scenery does him well. He signed a 3-year deal with New York Giants, so maybe that's what he needed to get out of Miami. But it's a kind of a shame because he was on a great trajectory there in Miami and had a really great year in 2023. So I'm not sure what it is. He's definitely going to be falling in the rankings, may even go undrafted. I'm not saying you need to draft him. I don't think he's going to be a huge volume tackle guy there in New York. What I am saying is don't forget about him. Don't forget about what he's done. And again, week 1, if you see Jevon Holland with 7 or 8 tackles, you're going to see me talking about him in my waiver wire videos. So I'd pick him up real quick, and I'd hit the ground running with Jevon Holland. But we got to see it first. At 35, we got Paulson Adebo. My last cornerback to make the cut here. Don't forget about Adebo. He broke his femur, which is pretty detrimental to a cornerback. It was a gruesome injury last season. But before that, he was on an absolute tear. He was on pace for 126 tackles in 7 games. As you can see here, in 7 games, he had 52 tackles. Insane amount. That's over 7 tackles a game for a cornerback. Not only was he getting tackles at a high rate, 3 of those games were double-digit tackle games. So just about half of them. There's no defensive back on this list that nobody in the NFL that had defensive back that had half of their games with 10 or more tackles. So was it going to sustain for the whole year? Probably not. But in those 7 games, not only we look at the tackles, what else did he do for me? He had 3 interceptions. He might have led the league if he played the whole season. He had a tackle for loss too. So Paulson Adebo, listen, he's been around the league for a couple years now. I believe his highest tackle mark before 2020. Well, yeah, it still is because he only had 50. His highest tackle mark in a season, I believe, is at 80. So this is not somebody who's going to go to New York and have 100 tackles. Just not going to happen. As a matter of fact, it could get worse in New York. Maybe it was the perfect storm, and he just kind of got unlucky with his opportunity and got hurt last year. He may be, not the Paulson Adebo that we're used to, but still, if you're drafting cornerbacks, definitely deserves respect. And I think this is the 7th or 8th cornerback on my list. So he's at that point, if you're, starting cornerbacks and you got 8 of them on this list, they're all being mustered. So Paulson Adebo definitely deserves attention and definitely left a bad taste in the mouth. Maybe too much time has passed and guys have forgot about him. But that's why you're here watching this video, so you don't. Finally, my last defensive back before I go into my honorable mentions is Cole Bishop. What have you done for me this year, Cole Bishop? Nothing. This is a guy that, if you're in a short bench dynasty league, you're probably cut bait already. You probably don't have him. He's probably not going to start, whether it be week 1 or all the way through week 17. I don't see him starting this year. They still have Damar Hamlin. We already talked about Taylor Rapp. We don't think he's going anywhere. But Cole Bishop at 22 years old, keep in mind, a lot of people were, tossing him and Tyler Nubin around. I still like Nubin. I said I liked Nubin last year. A lot of people preferred Cole Bishop. And I'm not going to say Cole Bishop's a worse player because the stats weren't there. It's just the wrong situation. He's in a good team with Buffalo. He's going to have to bid his time. But I do believe when, Cole Bishop's time is called, he's going to be productive. And we have already seen that, as a matter of fact. Cole Bishop, 3 games last year he started when Taylor Rapp was hurt. So 3 games that he started, he played 100% of defensive snaps. He ended those 3 games with 17 tackles. So this guy's a banger. He had 8 tackles in one of those games, 6 tackles in another. So Cole Bishop, when he gets his chance, he's gonna get 7 or 8 tackles a game, and that's all you're looking for here. So Cole Bishop, if you're in a deep league, continue to stash him. If you're in a shallow league and maybe Rapp gets injured or Damar Hamlin gets injured, then we're definitely looking at Cole Bishop and just expecting their production, maybe with more potential. Who knows? So Cole Bishop, continue stashing him. Put him on your watch list. And again, if there's an injury and you see the first game he has 5 or 6 tackles, yeah, he's probably gonna continue that trend and only get better. So Cole Bishop, have a lot of faith in. Whether it's 22, 24, or 28 years old, somewhere he's going to hit there. So still like him. And me, I always try to throw honorable mentions. Always try to give you more than what you came for. So some guys who didn't make the cut, I'll walk you through it. But Jalen Jones, he's been around for a couple of years. He had a great year for the Colts this season. 98 tackles. But that's really all he did. Wasn't really much in, getting the backfield. I believe he only had 2 interceptions. He had 3 tackles for loss. He did have 12 passes defense, so a little added bonus there. But yeah, we're here for the tackles. And Jalen Jones is a cornerback. He had 100 tackles. Not many cornerbacks are going to have 100 or more tackles. So Jalen Jones was definitely rostered in tackle-heavy scoring last year, maybe even your league too. And this is still a guy who's 23 years old and got 2 years left on the contract. And, Kenny Moore is another guy who I have on the honorable mentions. I maybe prefer Kenny Moore as the safer player right now, but maybe, in Dynasty specifically, Jalen Jones might have more upside for your future. But both of these guys, Jalen Jones, Kenny Moore, if I'm rostering corners, they're great options too. You see the second guy in red, Xavier Woods, talked about him before. Had his best year at 29 years old in Carolina last year. Almost played like a linebacker, to be honest with you. Now signs a new contract, 2-year contract with Tennessee. I'm not really feeling it in Tennessee. They have Amani Hooker there, who's pretty solid too. I'm not sure really what his production, if it's going to, add to, if it's going to dip. But based off my IDP knowledge and experience, I'm going to say that this is as good as it's going to get for Xavier Woods. this past season. How could it get better? 17 games played, didn't miss a game, 119 tackles and 3 interceptions. 2 out of the 17 games played were double-digit tackle games. And I'm sure if you're, in big tackle heavy scoring, or if you are in a deep league, Xavier Woods was owned, and for good reason, last year. But I hate to tell you, my hunch is saying that he's not going to repeat 119 tackles. Maybe he gets lucky and hits 100, and that still makes him rosterable. But again, somebody that really doesn't need in deeper leagues to be owned right now. But if you see them week 1, 7 or 8 tackles, buy in. And finally, the last 2 guys, Jalen Thompson, and then my last cornerback, Riley Moss. Jalen Thompson, we'll start off with him. He played 15 games last season, 98 tackles. So if he would have had those 2 games that he missed, probably would be looking at maybe $110. So I'm definitely taking Jalen Thompson serious, and that's with Budda Baker, having 160 tackles. There were just so many tackles for that backfield. It's not like they're getting, Carlos Dansby back. It's not like they're bringing in Bobby Wagner to soak up all the tackles. This is going to be another year where there's going to be tackles available for Jalen Thompson. I'm not saying he needs to be rostered right now. Obviously, he's an honorable mention. But again, if you're midway through the season, you lose a defensive back, and he's out there putting 6, 7 tackles a game, then this is somebody you're going to buy, obviously. And I believe he had 2 double-digit tackle performances last year, and that's just astronomical with Budda Baker. They're getting his too. So Jalen Thompson, still young guy, right? He's 26 years old, prove it deal. Maybe that's just what he needs, and the best is yet to come with him. And finally, Riley Moss, very similar player to Jalen Jones. Riley Moss is 25 years old, had his best season yet. 2 years left on the contract. Riley Moss, we like to vote for him. We like to see him in the NFL. But more importantly, when it comes to fantasy and IDP, he's out there getting tackles. 14 games played, 86 tackles, an interception, and forced fumble. And again, let's do the math. Let's just say he played those 3 games and had 15 more tackles. He would have had 101 tackles. So, listen, if you play IDP, you roster cornerbacks, Riley Moss. Not really much has changed there. He should be the outside number 2 cornerback next to Surtain again. They get Dre Greenlaw. Alex Singleton's going to be healthy. We talked about Hufanga coming to town. So maybe the situation isn't as great for Riley Moss's tackles just on the offseason moves. But again, I'm not going to personally draft him in my 14-man 2 defensive back league. But again, week 1, he has 7 or 8 tackles. Yeah, he's Riley Moss of 2024 automatically. So if you have any questions, that's my list. If you have any questions for me, any comments, I always appreciate it. Put it in the comment box. If you are not subscribed yet to our channel, please go ahead and do so. This is just right here. It's May 5th. This is a May 5th edition of Dynasty defensive backs. Come June 5th, come July 5th, it's going to look different. I'm going to stay up on this and get you guys more current information. But right now, the NFL draft is done. Free agents are signed for the most part, at least. We got a good look at what the teams are going to be. So, stay tuned for these rankings for more of my videos. And as always, I appreciate you, coming out and rocking with me. So until next time, we will see you on IDP Plus.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.